Chapter 1. The Starborn Child. The sky burned. Dolo had never seen a sky so alive. It was as if the heavens themselves had split open, birthing a golden fire that streaked across the blackened expanse. A brilliant star, its tail stretching endlessly behind it, plummeted toward the world, illuminating the verdant forest below. He stood atop a moss-covered ridge, breath caught in his chest. He had seen many wonders in his 16 summers, the great migrations of the silverhorn elk, the thundering storms that turned the sky purple, even the sacred dance of the elder shamans. But never this. This was not natural. The streak of fire screamed through the air, deafening even at a distance. Then, with a final flash, it struck the land beyond the eastern jungle. The impact shook the earth. A low, thunderous boom rippled through the valley, sending birds shrieking into the night. A second later, a pulse of wind slammed into Dolo's chest, forcing him to steady himself against a tree. The air smelled of burned wood and scorched metal. From the point of impact, a fire bloomed, its glow casting eerie shadows across the treetops. Dolo took a step forward, unable to look away. Something had fallen from the sky. Something had arrived. He turned, sprinting toward the village. The clan of the wolf stood in the heart of their village, gathered in a wide circle beneath the massive roots of the ancestor tree. The great fire pit crackled in the center, but its flames paled in comparison to the unnatural glow in the distance. Elders whispered among themselves. Warriors tightened their grips on their spears. The people feared what they had seen. Dolo pushed through the crowd, breathless from the run. The scent of burning resin filled the air from the torches that lined the gathering space. He found his father standing near the fire. Joran Stonefang, war chief of the wolf clan, stood with legs planted firmly apart and his spear butt resting against the ground. His sharp gaze swept over the gathered tribe. "The spirits have sent us a warning," Joran declared. His voice, deep and unshaken, carried over the anxious whispers. "Fire does not fall from the sky without reason. This is an omen of change, and change is dangerous." Dolo stepped forward, heart racing. "Father, we should see what it is." Joran's sharp gaze shifted to him. "No." "It could be a gift," Dolo insisted, "or a sign of something greater." "Or a curse," his father countered. "You think the shadow tribes will not see that fire as well? You think they will not also come, looking for power?" The name alone sent a shiver through the crowd. The shadow tribes, warriors who had abandoned balance and sought power over the spirits. Their leader, the shaman Varokan, had been gaining influence, and whispers of war were already spreading like sickness. "We should know what has come to our land before they do," Dolo urged. Joran's expression darkened. Before he could speak, an aged voice cut through the air. "It is not a warning." The crowd parted as Elder Waya approached. She leaned on her staff, her gnarled fingers gripping the weathered wood. Her hair, woven into intricate braids adorned with tiny bone charms, swayed as she moved. The firelight danced across her lined face, casting deep shadows beneath her eyes. "It is not a warning," she repeated. "It is a birth." A hush fell over the village. Joran's jaw tightened. "You cannot know that." "I do." Waya's gaze did not waver. "I have dreamt of this night for years. The spirits whispered of its coming. The first awakening is upon us." Dolo's heart pounded. The first awakening. He had heard the old myths, of course, stories of mana, the unseen power that once flowed through the world before it was sealed away. But they were just that. Stories. And yet, looking at the sky, at the smoldering glow beyond the jungle, he felt something in his chest he could not explain. "I will go," he said again, more certain now. His father exhaled sharply, but before he could refuse, Waya placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Let the boy go." Joran's lips pressed into a thin line. A silent battle passed between them, wisdom against wariness. Then, after a long pause, the chief turned to another warrior standing in the crowd. "Mako," he called. A tall, broad-shouldered figure stepped forward. His dark hair hung loosely over his forehead, and his jaw was tight. He was only a few years older than Dolo, but where Dolo had quickness, Mako had raw strength. He was the best fighter in their generation. "You go with him," Joran ordered. "If something unnatural lies beyond the trees, I want warriors there to face it." Mako met Dolo's gaze. His eyes, always guarded, betrayed nothing. Then, with a curt nod, he turned and adjusted the axe strapped to his back. "Let's move," Mako muttered. Together they ran toward the fire. The jungle, normally alive with the hum of insects and distant calls of night creatures, had fallen eerily silent. The thick canopy loomed overhead like a giant's ribs, and the ground beneath their feet softened, scorched, and brittle from the impact. Dolo led the way, his spear tip angled forward. His feet moved with instinct, barely feeling the moss beneath them. He glanced sideways at Mako, who moved like a panther, silent, purposeful. His axe rested against his shoulder, and his jaw was locked tight. "You feel it," Dolo whispered. Mako gave a slight nod. "Something's wrong." "Like the air's holding its breath." Mako didn't respond, but his grip on his weapon tightened. The trees thinned suddenly, and they reached the crater. Dolo froze. The land had been ripped apart. An enormous, smoldering pit lay in the jungle's heart, the ground cracked and steaming. Trees had been uprooted and burned, their trunks twisted from the force of the impact. The air smelled of ash and something else, something raw like the first breath of a newborn storm. At the very center of the crater, a figure. Dolo's breath caught. A boy. He lay motionless, curled within the remains of the shattered stone. His skin was smooth, almost glowing, his hair pale as the silver moon. He should have been burned, should have been crushed by the impact, but he was untouched. Mako swore softly. "Spirits save us." Slowly the boy stirred. His eyes flickered open, golden and bright like molten sunlight. They locked on to Dolo. Dolo stepped closer, unable to stop himself. The boy's gaze met his, and something passed between them. Recognition. Not in memory, but in the way the earth knows the river. The connection hummed through Dolo's chest, sparking beneath his ribs like a second heartbeat. The boy blinked, lips parting as if tasting the air for the first time. His voice was soft when he spoke. "I don't know." Dolo's breath caught in his throat. "You don't know what?" The boy shook his head faintly. His eyes darted to the sky, then back to Dolo. "Who I am." Mako raised his axe. "Dolo, step away." But Dolo didn't move. The air vibrated around them. He could feel it like threads weaving through the ground, the trees, the sky. All of it centered on the boy. "Mako, he's not dangerous." Mako's jaw clenched. Everything is dangerous when it falls from the sky. The boy sat up, wincing. His limbs moved awkwardly, like a newborn animal testing its legs for the first time. He reached toward Dolo without thinking. The moment their fingers brushed, Mana stirred. The wind shifted. The ground beneath their feet trembled. Mako cursed and stepped back, raising his axe defensively. "Mana," he hissed. "It's coming from him." The golden glow of the boy's eyes brightened for an instant before dimming again. He fell forward, unconscious. Dolo caught him instinctively. His skin was warm to the touch, and beneath his weight the ground hummed faintly. "What is he?" Mako demanded. Dolo didn't know, but something inside him whispered the truth. He cradled the boy's slight form against his chest and looked toward the horizon where their village lay hidden. He's the reason the sky burned tonight, Dolo said softly. Mako gave him a hard look but didn't argue. The jungle around them remained silent, save for the crackling of dying embers. Dolo adjusted his grip on the unconscious boy and met Mako's wary eyes. Let's go. Together they carried the fallen star back into the night.